Trigger once again single-handedly keeping the mecha genre alive. When SSSS.Gridman was released in 2019, I went into it only knowing the studio behind it, and after watching that first episode, I was under the impression that this was like Power Rangers but for anime. And let me tell you, I love Power Rangers. Everything from their transformation sequences to their Megazord fights, I just cannot get enough of that. But as I watched Gridman, enjoying the whole Monster of the Week formula, I slowly began to piece together what the show was really about. It was about helping someone who had gone off the deep end. Someone dealing with depression who could only cope with their problems by escaping into another world where everything went their way, refusing to face reality, seemingly turning the antagonist, Shinjo Akane, into the protagonist. It was a very emotional journey with a very heartfelt conclusion. So with the way it ended, I didn't think there would be a second season, and if there was going to be one, the bar had been set incredibly high. So I was surprised when I heard a sequel was taking place in the same universe, that being SSSS.Dynazenon. Despite being a sequel to SSSS.Gridman, SSSS.Dynazenon takes place in an entirely different setting with an entirely new cast, which makes sense considering the world setting of Gridman was a world created by Akane herself. Even the SSSS in SSSS.Dynazenon, these are too many S's, stands for a completely different thing. In Gridman, it stood for Special Support to Save a Soul, but in Dynazenon, the SSSS stands for Scarred Souls Shine Like Stars, which tells you a lot about what the season's main theme would be about. The main cast of SSSS.Dynazenon are each going through some kind of trauma, holding them back from truly moving forward with their lives. Yomugi is dealing with his parents' separation and can't stand the idea of his mom meeting someone new, so he avoids meeting her date and takes on a part-time job to support his mom financially, thinking if he can provide for her, she won't need another man to provide for her. Yume is dealing with the death of her sister and tries to find out the cause and reason behind her death, pushing people away in the process. Koyomi is still hung up on his middle school crush, constantly looking back at probably the most decisive moments of his life and regretting not taking up her offer to run away together. Chise feels like an outcast, refusing to go to school because she feels left out and lonely, so she hangs around Koyomi all the time because he's the only one she can really connect to and sees the two of them as similar. Gama continues to wait for his long-lost love even after being revived 5,000 years later and yearns to see her again. The characters have real issues they struggle with the drama they go through being the main focus of the anime and the mecha kaiju fights being the icing on the cake. It's honestly refreshing to see as they don't follow the usual stereotypes that these kind of shows have, such as the always rides with the moral high ground leader who can do no wrong, the one that tries too hard to be the next leader, the jokester, the nerd, and the girl. Bonus points if there are two girls. Even the antagonists, the kaiju eugenicists, aren't so one-dimensional. They aren't evil for the sake of being evil, wanting to destroy the world using kaiju just because. They genuinely believe their goal and justify their actions, claiming they're trying to save the world. In a way, they aren't exactly wrong, but more on that later. During the first couple of episodes, we see just how the trauma these characters have faced affect their personalities and the way they interact with each other and the world around them. Yomugi is so fixated on working and trying to support his mom that even after taking on the role as the Dino Soldier pilot, he still only thinks about going to work and skips out on training. Yume tries to keep her distance from people and not rely on them too much, even keeping the only friend she is shown to have at arm's length. Aside from that, she begins looking into the reason behind her sister's death in an attempt to find some kind of closure. Koyomi is... well, he's unemployed. But rather than go out and look for a job, he chooses not to, remaining in a state of stagnation. You could argue that finding a job is going to be hard, but if someone like Gama, who just randomly showed up out of nowhere, is able to find work, Koyomi should be more than qualified in finding a job. Chise constantly latches onto Koyomi, pretty much following him everywhere, and in some cases, stalking him. And because she feels left out, she tries really hard to be a substitute member to the team, trying to pilot when one of the other members aren't available. It's like forcefully inserting herself in the fun. And Gama just cannot stop thinking about his mysterious princess, hoping to see her again. He holds on to Dynazenon, which was entrusted to him in hopes that it will eventually give him the opportunity to see her again, and he frequently brings her up too. Fun fact, Goma's backstory is actually based off an episode of the original Hyper Agent Gridman that involved the mummy coming back to life 5,000 years later searching for his princess. I'll link the episode in the description. With such an interesting cast of characters, you really cannot hate any of them, and with the way they talk with each other, it feels oddly natural, even nailing awkward conversations in some cases. It's definitely one of the anime's strong points. The main theme of the anime is dealing with trauma and letting go of your past, a theme that is so intricately woven into the plot of the anime, and while we watch our lovable cast slowly overcome their issues, we have our antagonists, the kaiju eugenicists, who are like the exact opposite of them. The kaiju eugenicists are a group of 4 people who have the special power to control kaiju. They're the same as Goma, being revived 5,000 years later with the goal of creating a world where the kaiju are accepted and needed. And how do they do that? By using kaiju to wreck shit up. In Gridman, it was established that kaiju are born from negative emotions, with Akane being the one to design and fuel them with her negative emotions. The same still holds true in Dynazenon, minus needing Akane though. The way I see it, kaiju are literal manifestations of negative emotions. Emotions that are then enhanced by the kaiju eugenicists. When the kaiju spawn, they start out smaller and undeveloped and only really get colossal after the eugenicists take control of them. They straight up feed negative emotions to the kaiju, provoking them to go wild. Their goal is to use kaiju to steer the world into a new future. A future where it's okay for kaiju, aka negative emotions, to be able to express themselves and truly be free in all their destructive glory. And while they shine as a group, they also get their own individual moments, which gives them a lot more characterization. Onija is the impulsive loudmouth guy, and while he only ever has one thing on his mind, he's the most honest with his emotions. While the others use terms like setting humans free, Onija just straight up wants to murder people. Juga is the calm and collected serious type. He handles things logically and is the most concerned with carrying out their goal. But when he does take control of kaiju, he becomes a try-hard, like he's desperately trying to overcompensate for something. Mujina is the aloof one who just goes along with whatever the group decides. She doesn't really have thoughts outside kaiju and doesn't really try to. Shizumu is, well, different. He's really mysterious. Despite being part of the group, he tends to keep himself as a distance from the rest, both literally and metaphorically. He's always seen as standing or facing away from the other 3 or just slightly out of frame. He's closed himself off from the rest, resulting in an air of loneliness around him. They're all, in one way or the other, contrast the main casts, and that's great. Good antagonists are meant to do that. It makes confrontations all the more interesting and feel personal. And with each new confrontation, our protagonists slowly learn things about themselves as well as confront their traumas and try to move on. The antagonists, on the other hand, do not. They continue to latch onto their ideals, and nothing paints this more than the dynamic between Koyomi and Mujina. After a chance encounter, they somehow bond over the fact that they have nothing they really want to do outside controlling kaiju and piloting Dynazenon, finding a kind of relatability between them. However, only after they face their pasts and the threat of new kaiju no longer appearing does Koyomi finally decide to move on with his life and finally find something else to do, getting out of his stagnation and attempting to find a job. Mujina, on the other hand, realizes that all she ever had were kaiju and nothing more, and rather than use her newfound free time to explore new things and find new purpose, she blames Koyomi for making her realize that kaiju were all she ever had and genuinely despises him for that, single-handedly destroying the Koyomi x Mujina ship in the process. The way the characters come to terms with their past trauma is somewhat similar to Persona 4, where the main cast of that game had to face their shadow selves, which were manifestations of their darkest thoughts and fears, and when they did, unlocked new power that could help them grow as people. SSSS.Dynazenon definitely serves as a compelling character drama, just as good, and in some cases better than SSSS.Gridman. The character arcs don't feel ham-fisted or rushed, giving each character adequate screen time and a satisfying conclusion. In the end, they truly did shine like stars. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. I'd love to know what you guys think about SSSS.Dynazenon in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, why not leave a like, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. This is BreadHead, signing off.